And thank you for joining us today for our webcast, Essential Capabilities for Success in Online Grocery. My name is Rob Lunder from the Edge by Essential Marketing Department, and we're so excited today to be joined by Michelle McNamara, Vice President of E-Commerce with Chobani, Sam Gagliardi, Senior Vice President for E-Commerce with IRI Worldwide, and Nick Everett, Director of Advisory for EMEA here with Edge by Essential. For the call today, all participants are on mute, but if you do have any questions, you can ask them by entering them into the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will make sure to do our very best to get to your questions. And if we're unable to do so today due to time constraints, we will do our very best to make sure to follow up with you after the webcast today and respond to you directly. Today's webcast is brought to you by Edge by Essential, formerly BrandView, Clavis Insight, One Click Retail, and Planet Retail R&G. Our four companies have joined forces under Essential PLC with a shared vision to empower brands and retailers with the most comprehensive, accurate, and actionable insights and advisory solutions to grow revenue in an e-commerce driven marketplace. We partner globally with the world's leading brands and retailers to identify strategies and to provide weekly, daily, and real-time digital shelf performance KPIs, including pricing, promotions, availability, traffic, conversion, sales, and share. Today's webcast is also brought to you by IRI Worldwide. IRI integrates the world's largest set of otherwise disconnected purchase, media, social, casual, and loyalty data to help CPGs, retail, over-the-counter healthcare, and media companies grow their businesses. Today's webcast is also brought to you by Chobani, one of the world's largest dairy processors specializing in strained yogurt. I'd like to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Michelle McNamara, who is the Vice President of E-Commerce for Chobani and leads the organization's e-commerce strategy. Sam Gagliardi is the Senior Vice President of E-Commerce for IRI Worldwide. Sam has more than 20 years of cross-functional sales, marketing, and digital leadership experiences with top FMCG manufacturers, including Colgate-Palmolive, J&J, and R&B. And Reckitt Benckiser RB. He's an expert in e-commerce strategy, digital marketing, search engine optimization, media management, and marketing management. And lastly, Nick Everett. He is our Director of Advisory for EMEA here with Edge by Essential. Nick delivers strategic projects for clients, focusing on go-to-market strategies and winning in an e-commerce driven world. He has worked in strategy and insight roles at firms including Safeway, Tesco, and IGD. I'd now like to introduce Sam, who can share a quick update on everything happening with IRI, and then kick off today's presentation with an overview of the state of online grocery. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate the opportunity here today, and thank you all for attending this call. Nick, if you would please go to the next slide here. As many of you know, IRI is the largest consolidator of online and in-store data in the industry. We leverage and utilize our unique and best-in-class capabilities to do that. I'm going to quickly walk through a 360-foot or 36,000-foot view of what's happening in the industry. For definition purposes, I'm going to talk about the consumer packaged goods industry, same thing as the FMCG industry, and it really is a collection of multiple edible and non-edible categories to really allow our clients to better understand what's happening in the online marketplace. And Nick, if you do the builds on this chart here, so for the consumer packaged goods industry, FMCG total sales right now, we're counting about $76 billion in total sales. That's an increase of over 32.4% versus a year ago. We are now, e-commerce for CPG items is now in 40% of households. That's a 29% increase from previous, and trips are up 13%. As many of you know, it's really about penetration and about trips. That's what drives incrementality. More and more households are buying more and more products online. Now, if you go to the next slide, Nick, what we also like our clients to understand is that as of right now, in terms of the CPG omnichannel world, approximately 12% of total sales are coming from the online space. That's important to really spend a little bit of time on that right now, because what we're finding here is that it's not really 12% of sales for the traditional core blue chip type organizations. Many of those organizations are not actually growing or not being able to benefit from 12% of their sales coming from the online space. It's really new to the to the industry and new to the market items that are really driving that growth. So in essence, what is happening here is that the entire consumer packaged goods world, the pie that is CPG, is getting larger because the barrier entry has really been removed from a lot of very small and nimble brands coming in. In fact, when you take a look at the growth, over 64% of the CPG omnichannel growth is now coming from the online space. And again, many of the blue chip firms that are on this call, they may not be seeing the same growth rate from their e-commerce business. And that's because it's the new to market CPG firms that are coming in and driving disproportionate amount of growth. This is a little bit of a precursor. Later on, we'll show you what the results are of that market expansion and blue chip companies not able to keep up with that market expansion. Nick, if you go to the next slide, please. Now, let's focus on the number one retailer in the online space, and that is Amazon. For total e-commerce channel growth, we're seeing that 58% of that growth is being driven by Amazon. So if you're doing the math quickly in your head, Nick, if you go to the next build, if 58% of the entire growth is coming of the online growth is coming from Amazon, yes, Amazon is approximately 37% of the entire industry growth. So hopefully these two metrics here help you understand that it's the combination of more shoppers buying online, more shoppers buying more often online, and unfortunately for many of our blue chip clients, more shoppers buying more products online that they're first being introduced to online. Nick, if you go to the next slide. I think it's self-evident that Amazon has the lion's share. Again, this is a mixture of all 180 CPG categories that IRI tracks. We're combining all the information here together to give you a macro view of what's happening in the marketplace. And hands down, Amazon has a 54% share of what's happening in terms of CPG e-commerce volume. And yes, this does include first-party and third-party sales, so it's the entire CPG world. In addition to that, you can see the performance of Walmart, but also Chewy here in this context. I'm going to show you later on, once we start dividing into departments, how some of the traditional omnichannel retailers like Kroger and such, how they're faring a little bit better when it comes to edible categories. Nick, can we go to the next slide, please? Now, if you take a look, these are the top tier categories that are driving the most amount of volume in the online space. And as I was alluding to earlier on, if you take a look and if you take a look at each of these categories, whether it's vitamins, pet supply, pet food, skincare, coffee, weight control, cosmetics, hopefully it's intuitive to a lot of the folks on the phone here that not only are these categories ideal categories for the online space, and most importantly, ideal categories for the Amazon space, hence Amazon's dominance here, but also these categories, if you were to do any type of a product search on Amazon, you would also see that the proliferation of non-blue chip organizations within these categories is quite extensive. And that goes back to the point that I was making earlier on, which is while e-commerce is 12% of total omnichannel sales, please know that is 12% of an ever-increasing pie of the omnichannel CPG world. Nick, if you go to the next slide, please. Now, if we were to break the omnichannel CPG world into edibles and non-edibles, just to get our hands around the differences here, what you see real fast here is that in terms of the share of the omnichannel growth, we see Amazon continues to dominate in the non-edible space. You see that on the left-hand side of this chart here. They have a 52% share of the omnichannel growth for non-edibles, while they only have a 17% share for the edibles. And I think that's very, very worth noting right now in the context of what Amazon is trying to do with Fresh and what Amazon is trying to do with Whole Foods. They haven't been as successful as I believe they would hope to have been. But if you go to the right-hand side of this chart now, and what we did here is that we put together an aggregate of click and collect business, so Walmart click and collect, Kroger click and collect, so forth and so on. And then we also included first and third party delivery services. So that includes Peapod as a first party, that includes Instacart as a third party, or Shipt as a third party. And we combine the click and collect and the first and the third party delivery because they are more alike than they are different. When you combine the two together, what you're able to see right now is that in terms of percent of omnichannel growth, over a quarter of that growth is being driven by by edibles, or a quarter of click and collect and deliveries is driving the omnichannel growth for edibles, versus only 10% for the non-edible categories. So right now you can start to see the clear distinction between edible and non-edible categories in terms of how product is being fulfilled to the end consumer. Nick, if you go to the next slide, please. And just do the build, my friend. Now, when we take a look at the omnichannel sales by department, as you can see here, we divided up into 8 departments. They include core food departments like refrigerated food, frozen food, general food, and beverages, as well as core non-food departments like home care, health, general merch, and beauty. And what you see in terms of sales, a disproportionate amount of sales in the non-food categories is coming from the online space. Versus if you take a look at the food categories, their sales are still very, very low, which is to be expected going forward. Now, when you take a look at the growth, again, same thing as you would expect. The non-food categories, the non-edible categories, more and more of their growth is coming from the online space. And again, I submit to you that that's also happening because the universe that those brands or those categories are used to competing in is actually expanding faster than many of the core blue chip brands are able to. Still exceptional growth in terms of today's terms, in terms of what's happening in the edible categories. It's just not at the same rate of percent of growth versus the edible categories. Nick, if you go to the next slide, please. Now, again, we're taking a look at Amazon's share of e-commerce growth versus the share of click and collect first and third party delivery, again, because they're more alike than they are different. And what you're seeing here really quickly, and it's good to look at both these charts simultaneously, is that in terms of Amazon's share of growth for the non-edible categories, they're continuing to roll. Again, that makes sense in their marketplace model where, again, they're inviting many different brands. They've, in essence, removed the barriers to entry to get a new brand's product in front of consumers. They're doing very well. Versus when you take a look at the edible categories are competing incredibly well with the omni-channel retailers, the retailers that are taking, in essence, their in-store approach, and they're bringing it to the online space, and they're fulfilling those needs and those wants of those consumers via click and collect or first or third party delivery. I think it's self-evident here in this context then that those category leaders in that environment will continue to do well because they're not being exposed to new and incremental competition by these retailers not operating marketplaces. Nick, if you go to the next slide. This is very good for many core blue chip brands right now, because as we continue to track click and collect and first and third party sales delivery right now, we're accounting in the latest 52 weeks that business right now, again, click and collect plus first and third party delivery businesses is just over $10.6 billion, quickly approaching $11 billion. And for the last several years, it's had a CAGR of over 46%. So for a lot of the core category leaders, specifically within the edible spaces, obviously click and collect first and third party delivery is really the key to long-term growth going forward. Nick, if you go to the next slide. Now, let me make sure you guys understand this slide. So what we're comparing here is the same slide you saw earlier on the left-hand side, where we talked about how Amazon, in terms of total e-commerce, has a 54% share, and Walmart has a 7% share, and then Chewy afterwards. What you're seeing now is that when we take a look at the edible categories here, Amazon shrinks from a 54 share down to a 40 share. And I think that's self-evident to a lot of folks on the phone right now. But Walmart really creeps with their prominence at 17% share. And then afterwards, you have Instacart and then Kroger, obviously. And that's really showing, when it comes to the edible categories, that's really the first or the tip of the spear for many of these different omni-channel retailers as they continue to help migrate shoppers from the in-store space to the online space. The shoppers are usually already in their 4 walls. Those shoppers have already selected, whether it's a Kroger or a Walmart or whoever it may be, as their trusted supplier of different grocery or food items. And it's important for those retailers and for the major branded category leaders to continue to keep those consumers within that ecosystem, because what you'll see here in the very future, when you open up to more of a marketplace, you're opening yourself up to more competition, and unfortunately that always leads to share decline. So if you go to the next slide, Nick. And that really is what does this mean for brands? Is that right now understand brands need to really fully understand not only what's happening in the marketplace, but also what are the key points of differentiation between the different models when it comes to e-commerce that are in the marketplace. What does a brand need to do to be successful to win and continue to drive sales on Amazon? What risks do you have specifically in the context of the marketplace allowing new unproven brands to really come in and compete against you versus continue to drive your performance within the four walls of the omnichannel world, the world that we all have known for the last many years, and continue to drive your growth there. Nick, if you go to the next slide. Now, this is a slide that I've been using for many years, and what it really depicts here, just so that everyone understands, MULO is another way to say the in-store market. It's multi-outlet. It's a combination of many different channels. And what you're seeing here in blue is that on average, category leaders, their share in the in-store, the MULO, the blue, is greater than what their share is online. Okay, in fact, we on average, it's about a 17-point share gap right now. So I think that's self-evident in the context of what I showed you before, which is right now Amazon has a 54% share. Amazon continues to operate a marketplace environment, and with the exception of the edible categories, Amazon has been able to really grow the entire market that is the omnichannel CPG world. And because core traditional blue chip brands, here's several of them that you see right here, haven't been able to keep up with that growth, their share is less online than their share is in store, which is first and foremost a KPI, key performance index, of how well they're doing versus their peers today. But also because this is really being driven by that 54% share that Amazon has, it is actually a predictor of what may happen in the future as more and more shoppers continue to migrate to the in-store, to the online space, specifically at Amazon. Nick, if you go to the next slide, please. Now, if you're to take a look at the same metric, but this time only look at click and collect plus first and third party delivery services, the share gap is only 4 points. So that is significant to really call out in the context of the different fulfillment types as shoppers continue to migrate to the online from the in-store. They're also selecting how they're gaining to receive their products from different retailers. And as these consumers continue to choose fulfillment, whether it's click and collect or if it's first or third party delivery services, they're keeping their choices much more in tune with how they have been shopping within the in-store world. Nick, if you go to the next slide. If you were to map the share delta that I've been talking about, right now in gold you have Amazon. Again, this is the share delta of category leaders, and the delta number is their in-store versus their online share. Gold is Amazon, blue is click and collect and first and third party delivery services. My point here, this is indicative for the entire industry right now, is that the share gap on Amazon continues to be very wide. It fluctuates monthly here, but it continues to be plus double digits in terms of how well an omnichannel brand is performing within their venue, and that has everything to do with the fact that new brands have come onto the marketplace and have expanded the marketplace versus the very closed and controlled environment that is the in-store world here in blue, which is click and collect, first and third party delivery. Nick, if you go to the next slide, please. So just to recap all this real fast, a couple of things to consider when thinking about e-commerce and the edible categories here. As we know already, e-commerce continues to be very big and is growing fast. What I want to make sure I'm impressing upon you all right now, that all the growth isn't really benefiting the large brands as much as it is benefiting the new brands. New brands, whether they are new CPG brands or new retailers like Chewy or Amazon, they're expanding the marketplace. And their expansion in the marketplace, they're benefiting more than all the traditional core blue chip companies. Because of that, e-commerce is driving industry growth. Edibles is the new E in e-commerce, and then e-commerce is just another part of the omnichannel. Omnichannel retailers are investing in driving penetration and frequency. And remember that gaining penetration and frequency is the only way a brand will grow incrementality, whether it's in-store or online. So Nick, let me hand this off to you now for you to take it from here.
Great, thank you, Sam, and hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon. What I wanted to do is build on some of the points Sam's talked about, and particularly share some of the latest thinking from Edge by Essentials advisory team. We've done a lot of work recently with clients to help them understand the drivers of change and the capabilities needed to really win in this sort of incredibly fast-moving landscape and unlock the opportunities that Sam's talked about. And I think, first of all, we're really seeing a shift now from retailers particularly focusing solely on scale to be now much more about smart retail. And this includes a number of factors, from the digitalization of the store, but also much greater agility and willingness and desire to innovate, experiment, and move at greater pace. And I use Walmart on this slide deliberately, as I think it's a great blueprint for how a global business can and is transforming itself really effectively from scale to smart retailing. And I want to come back to this throughout, really. And of course, the landscape is becoming more fragmented and complex. As we know, that traditional store-based route to market was much more straightforward. Of course, the shopper did the costly element of the last mile. It was my fuel in my car, my time to drive to the store, to buy the products, to collect them and take them home. And the advent of first-party and third-party e-commerce has clearly, as consumers, given us much more choice. We can choose from millions of products. Delivery speeds are accelerating all the time. We can also purchase directly from brands through D2C, and that's an area that's starting to gain real traction, and we're seeing lots of innovate and drive that forward, particularly given the valuable customer data that it can enable brands to capture. And most recently, we've seen a real explosion in the number of what we call the digital intermediary, those digital platforms like Instacart, Shipt, Wrapup, Cornershop, and increasingly Facebook and Google, which are also further disrupting that path to purchase, providing even more options for us to purchase from. And I'll come back to those intermediaries in a minute, because what I think this shows is the complexity of the landscape. And of course, that adds cost. And the key challenge which retailers and CPGs are all facing is to figure out how to operate efficiently, effectively, but of course profitably to win and meet today's consumer needs. And I think there's an interesting dynamic happening, particularly in terms of this click and model, because it is so important and growing. And there's an interesting interaction between brick and mortar and pure play, because for the traditional retailers moving online, click and collect is of course the preferred option. It leverages existing assets and can be incorporated into their existing network. Delivery increasingly being used, but it is costly, of course. And this is why we're seeing so many traditional brick and mortar omnichannel retailers develop partnerships with intermediaries as they try and figure out what is the best way to solve this last mile fulfillment challenge. And in the US, Instacart and Shipt, which of course are owned by Target, have done a fantastic job and are rapidly expanding the number of retailers they're working with. Now, at the same time, pure play operators like Amazon are realizing that clearly their fulfillment models need to be flexible and looking beyond that, beyond just the pure delivery model, by offering pickup, partnerships with other retailers, and of course their own physical stores. And Amazon's acquisition of Whole Foods is the best example of this. But other pure play leaders like Alibaba, JD.com are also developing physical stores as a really critical route to consumers, particularly as the benchmark moves from 2-day delivery to 1 day, and soon will of course be same day will be the standard and the norm. And physical stores clearly give that opportunity for potentially profitable fulfillment. And that's why I'm convinced really Amazon and others will be making further acquisitions in this space. And this really reinforces our own Store of the Future research that the store is not dead, and provided it can be repurposed and reinvested in, particularly as part of this online to offline world, then arguably the store is more important than ever before. And across the pickup and delivery solutions and the spectrum being used, we've done some recent benchmarking on this. It is phenomenal when you consider the number of different options, solutions, being used and deployed now, either at early test phase or for many actually in rapid rollout too. And just a few examples on this slide here show that retailers, many of them who are leading the way. So it's a more complex landscape than ever before, and that really brings me back to that first point about the need to move from scale to smart retail. And I think for the traditional retailers, there are some key challenges which are critical if they're to overcome to enable them to compete effectively with Amazon and other pure play businesses. So on the positive, stores, the retailers typically have very convenient locations, often thousands of stores, coverage across the country, and they're strong, trusted, credible brands. But of course, many stores, particularly the larger ones, are facing slowing growth or even declining sales. And more worryingly, I think many retailers still have a very short-term focus on profitability, whether that's quarterly, because that's what shareholders demand, or also they have a very store-based approach and philosophy and way of working. So I think the two key areas that retailers will have to overcome to win, particularly in online grocery, is firstly the financial element of seamlessly integrating grocery pickup, click and collect as a profitable route to fulfillment. And secondly, and perhaps more challenging, is to develop that much longer term investment horizon and the ability to test and act quickly at pace. And this second area, I think, is more challenging, but there are some fantastic examples of retailers who are leading the way on this in this area. And I want to just share now four areas really where I think we're seeing real focus from retailers looking to win in online grocery, and that's click and collect, supply chain automation, the frictionless store of the future, and partnerships for capability and growth. So firstly, in terms of grocery pickup, click and collect, I really think Walmart is best in class, and it's accelerating more than any retailer its efforts to really leverage that physical network. And I think it really recognizes this is one battle that it absolutely can take Amazon on that and win. It's on track to reach over 3,000 stores for grocery pickup this year, and same day grocery delivery from 1,600 stores. And I think Mark Laurie has been instrumental to this turnaround, and for me shows the importance of having that digital first thinking at the highest management positions, because when Walmart acquired Jet.com in 2016, it I think really wisely appointed him to run all of Walmart's US e-com business, and that energy, that fail fast mentality, that's been, I think, one of the key drivers of Walmart's success in this area. It's also interesting to look at what he said in interviews last October and November about the importance of the store network in this fulfillment model, about how it enables Walmart to leverage the assets. And as he said back then, we can deliver same day at a lower cost to serve than anyone else. The margins are incredible, which I think is a really powerful statement. And that, of course, brings me to the current battleground, that of delivery speed. And following Amazon's announcement last month that it was investing $800 million this quarter to commence the rollout of one-day shipping on Prime, Walmart has, of course, hit back and just yesterday announced it was adding free next-day delivery on general merchandise through Walmart.com, with plans to roll that out to 75% of the US population this year. And whilst that particular initiative, I think, is largely being fulfilled by the fulfillment centers, I think it shows really Walmart's investment, its commitment here, and how it's taking this battle to Amazon really head on. So Walmart, for me, great example of a retailer moving from scale to smart retail. And given the complexity and cost of the modern supply chain, as I've already shown, I think automation is now becoming table stakes because the supply chain is so important, and retailers are really looking to drive and increase speed at the same time as lower the costs of fulfillment. And just three examples I've shown here. Ocado leads the way, I think, in terms of the automated capability it now offers, and has developed this really successful model now of partnering with retailers globally who, yes, for a price, are able to leapfrog years of their own development and cost and mistakes and experimentation to use Ocado's technology. And the deals it's done with Kroger in the US, Coles in Australia, and M&S, Marks and Spencer in the UK, I think are incredibly impressive, and all credit to that business. Walmart too, as you would expect, is accelerating its automation, focusing too on in-store operational efficiency, which I think is one area Walmart has always been highly focused on. And clearly with its volume and its scale, every small, tiny percentage point improvement can have a huge impact on the bottom line. And another retailer I've also been really impressed with is Ahold Delhaize. Now has a really clear omni-channel strategy under CEO Franz Muller. And for example, partnering with startup Takeoff to roll out automated mini warehouses at stores to offer quick, flexible solutions. And as he says here, the focus all about reducing the cost of the last mile. Another area we're seeing a big focus on retailers is the store of the future. Now, this is a complete research field for us and a really important one. And having a frictionless element is one important part of that. And this is really a way of leveraging digital technology across many areas, for example, including speedy checkout solutions to remove the friction in terms of the customer journey in store, but also includes testing and new innovation around replenishment, ordering, click and collect in store, etc. So it's a really important area for retailers. And I think for many, it's also acceptance and realization that Amazon Go, the just walk out technology that it's rolling out and developing, is coming. It's going to come across markets, and I think that will really transform convenience retailing, as we know it. So we're seeing multiple trials. For example, Auchan is bringing its unmanned store concept from China, where it's been rolling that out back to France, and that will be a fascinating test to see if it can make that work in its home market. Carrefour just a few weeks ago is launched mobile payment in store in Italy, and Walmart has converted a store in New York to its intelligent retail lab to trial that technology in a real life environment. In the UK, also Sainsbury's has opened what it calls the UK's first till-free grocery store. No checkouts in store, and the only way you can pay is through the Smart Shop app. And I was actually in that store yesterday, and whilst I think there's clearly some challenges to educate customers, getting them to download the app and really break their normal habitual habits. I think it's exactly what retailers need to be doing, that testing, experimenting, listening to the feedback from customers, refining it further and constantly improving their offer, because, I think really clear, as we know, to sit back and do nothing, and particularly for retailers to wait for Amazon to develop its own Amazon Go, I think is simply not an option. And the final area is partnerships. I think this is another really critical area for store-based retailers who've built their business in the physical world. And to win in today's landscape requires partnering with others, whether that's to increase your access and distribution, maybe working even with a previous competitor like Kroger and Walgreens have done, or Coles partnering with Amazon, or importantly, building learning and capability through alliances with the leading pure play retailers like Walmart's done with JD.com and Auchan's done with Alibaba. And of course, as I've already mentioned, leveraging that last mile flexibility and that agility challenge. And that's exactly what Aldi and Lidl are doing. These, after all, are the two biggest, or amongst the biggest discount retailers in the world. They're doing exactly that to figure out themselves how can they enter successfully, online grocery shopping. So in the interest of time, just to wrap up before I hand over to Michelle, just wanted to leave you with a few thoughts on some of the areas we think are key to win in this online grocery space. And I know from working with our clients daily on this, that there's really no quick, easy wins. And there's some real challenges and frustrations, particularly, for example, the first point around developing new KPIs, where that requires one true P&L read across online and offline. And that is challenging. It's hard to achieve, often with data's not always visible. But I think some of the areas that we're seeing big focus on: supply chain, data, real-time visibility, and data and analytics, data science becoming a really important skill and capability now. Store of the Future initiatives will gain prominence and more focus by retailers as they figure out how can they really digitize and accelerate that investment in store. We'll see more partnerships, more what we call co-opetition, retailers and businesses working together, after all, in the face of a greater competitive threat, whether that's Amazon, Alibaba, discounters, whoever, but it's partnering for growth. And finally, I think absolutely critical to win in today's online grocery landscape is that longer term horizon, that willingness to take risks, invest for the longer term, but at the same time, that fail fast, trial, innovate at pace mentality, which I think is really, really key. So at this point, wanted to bring Michelle into the conversation. Hopefully you can hear us okay and join us, Michelle. Just talked about the opportunity, and Sam covered some of the, the growth in edible. I've looked at, some of the broader landscape opportunities and challenges and what retailers are doing. Just wondered from your perspective and experience, what do you see, in the industry as some of the opportunities and challenges that need to be overcome?
Thanks, Nick. It's always great to join the conversation with you and Sam. I really wanted to address some of the challenges that are facing retailers in the context of three different areas. First, the overall landscape. Then secondly, in addressing some supply chain concerns around perishable. And then thirdly, really understanding what value means to the consumer. So if you take a look at the overall landscape, I think that, there's been some challenges for retailers all along. I know that I tend to be biased because I've worked in this space now for 8-9 years, but I do think that some of the retail challenges that are taking place really are not just the demise of retail is not solely on the fault of e-commerce. I think for a long time, retailers were a little bit comfortable in what they were delivering from a customer experience. And I once heard someone speak in the industry call it the 1985 test, where you could go into a department store or a grocery store and spin yourself around until you were ready to drop on the floor dizzy. And when you stand back up, it still looks like 1985 and you know where to go, even though you're dizzy. So consumers have started to seek out different experiences in their shopping habits. And I think that that's where e-commerce has really delivered for them. And that's why so many small or niche brands have been able to make their way, because they aren't afraid to innovate. They aren't afraid to do things differently, and they aren't afraid to meet the consumer, where she is and deliver what it is that she wants. And sometimes the retailers, are afraid to do some of these things because they do need to report to the street, right, and deliver shareholder value. So that's been a challenge for them. How do we continue to evolve and deliver the value that our shareholders are and investors are looking for? So I see that to be something that continues to constrain some of them. And the partnerships that you mentioned previously is something that is helping all of them to move forward. So I expect that to continue. When you take a look at the supply chain and how 1P and 3P are delivering against that, or click and collect, for a brand like Chobani, they haven't quite figured out yet how to do cold chain effectively. Now, you could argue that click and collect has figured it out because when they fulfill orders, they're holding things in refrigerated cases within their stores. But yet for brands like myself, they still don't have basic things like sampling capability available. And sampling is very critical as you're trying to drive trial on a brand, especially something that may be new in a category. And brands love to be able to sample, because the one thing that most of these retailers do offer is, once you sample the item, is the ability to automatically have your item, in the consumer shopping history. That's not available for perishable brands. But even beyond that, they haven't figured out just yet how to do cold ship in a cost-effective way. So taking a brand like Chobani, hypothetically, if we had something that was differentiated that they couldn't get to the grocery store, how do I deliver that product and put it on a consumer's doorstep if at-home ship-to delivery is what she has chosen to have versus a live person deliver her groceries? I think that that's something that we need to see to evolve. But then, the biggest thing is the understanding of value. The shopper is shopping online because she is seeking convenience. And the convenience that you give her in your shopping experience is her value. Just like the way she is in store, she wants to quickly deselect and get to the items that she wants and put them in her basket. And if she has some extra time afterwards, she'll reward you with additional browsing and put, incremental items into her cart. That's the real value. She doesn't want to be on your site for 45 minutes or an hour trying to fill her basket, because if she had that time, she would just go to the store and do it herself. So what I think retailers really need to understand is that they need to understand that her path to purchase is different because she's online, she's not in a store. She also may be a shopper that looks totally different than the shopper that comes into your store. So I think Walmart online grocery pickup is a great example of that. Walmart is doing a really effective job of pulling consumers that may have shopped Whole Foods in the past because they're into the organic foods. They're now coming to Walmart because they know that they have a great selection, they have the best price, and they don't need to step foot into their stores, right? So you need to think that that consumer may be a little bit different. The biggest thing that I think, though, where a lot of them fall down in this is that they think that they need to go and offer huge price discounts or additional coupons to attract that shopper. That shopper is not price, it's not to say there aren't some deal seekers, but for the most part, she's not price sensitive. She wants to get in and shop quickly and get out. Over 70% of consumers are actually starting their shopping trip from going to last week's purchase history or going directly to the search bar. She's not even seeing their weekly ad. She's not seeing the digital coupon offers. Those tactics aren't effective for her. So, as they think about their profitability and how they're struggling to make this type of experience profitable for them, well, what they really need to do is move away from some of those deep discounting and aggressive promotional tactics and start thinking about things that can address her trial barriers. Why is it that she doesn't necessarily want to shop online to begin with? Well, first and foremost, we know she doesn't want to pay for the delivery. There's some of us like myself who still have that mom guilt that, one, I'm not going to the store and picking things out for myself, and now I'm paying somebody to do it for me. I don't pay for delivery. So how do you address that promotionally or in your shopper acquisition? How do you deal with that? And then secondly, how do you get her over the fact that she's no longer picking out her fruits and vegetables or her meat? There are some retailers out there that their click and collect model, when they're fulfilling orders, the produce that's being put into that cart has never even seen the store floor. Stop and think about how better quality that item is if an apple has not been out on the store floor and manhandled by 3 or 4 or 5 customers who have picked it up to make certain that it's ripe or not bruised, whatnot. But they don't talk about that in their messaging. They focus more on the deal. So some of these retailers may need to take a look and change up how they're messaging to consumers and deliver on that customer experience. There's several retailers out there who have started to find, their way in delivering a better customer experience. They're attracting new customers, but what they're also doing is they're building equity and building trust with that customer, and the customer is rewarding them. So they're building that trust online. And then when they stop and they take a look, yeah, they know overall their store traffic is down, but where they're finding pockets of growth are with those digital shoppers. So she's doing her big trip online, her big purchases online, but she still stops in store to supplement, on the off shopping week, or, in the middle of the week when she's ran out of milk or eggs or needs those other things. So at the end of the day, with that great customer experience, they're gaining a larger share of her wallet. So I think that they really need to start taking a look at how they redefine their value equation. And I think that they look to brands like Chobani that can help them do that and deliver something meaningful. So lots of challenges out there to still overcome, but I think as shoppers, become more sophisticated in this area, retailers are really going to be tasked to figure out, how they innovate on the back end from a supply chain standpoint and deliver a meaningful customer experience in the same vein. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Rob.
Thanks so much, Michelle, and of course, Nick and Sam as well. Really appreciate your take and insights. We had some questions come in regarding the slide here. Yeah, this was a slide for when Michelle was speaking. So no one, we were on the slide, so we did not move ahead or anything like that. So want to thank again Michelle, Sam, and Nick. Great insights. Unfortunately, we don't have time for any Q&A today, just due to time limits here. But we appreciate the influx of questions that have come in, and we'll make sure to do our best to follow up to your questions directly after the webcast. Nick, if you can just go to the next slide, I just wanted to share with everybody, in addition to our virtual webinars that we host, we also have an awesome schedule of in-person events and programs that we want to share with you going forward. And one in particular exciting opportunity is coming up in just 2 weeks. We'd like to invite you to our Advanced Retail Strategy program in partnership with NYU Stern Executive Education on May 29th and 30th on campus in New York City. This is an exclusive 2-day immersion program for brand and retail leaders across functions, taught by leading NYU Stern business professors and industry practitioners, that provides the perfect blend of theory and application to analyze and operationalize the latest strategies critical to winning the future of commerce, including e-commerce, store of the future, shopper engagement, and retention and supply chain. The program price through the NYU Stern Executive Education program is $3,800 per person. However, through Edge, you can register for $2,500. There aren't many seats left, so be sure to register quickly. You can either reach out to your Edge partners or register directly via our website at essentialedge.com, or you can contact info@essentialedge.com. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining today's session. And as your organization continues to build out its strategies for 2019 and beyond, Edge by Essential can absolutely help you along that journey. And again, you can contact us via email at info@essentialedge.com or by visiting essentialedge.com to learn more. Sam, do you want to just share with everybody on the call the latest with our IRI that you guys have going on?
Sure, Rob. Absolutely. Thank you. In terms of what IRI has going on, please know that we're actually hosting our very first IRI Summit in the UK coming up in June. Please refer to our website for more information on that. Excuse me, not June, but in July. In addition to that, please know that we will be releasing a press release later this week that will talk about how we're actually infusing now point of sale data coming from retailers into our e-commerce solution for the US marketplace going forward. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Sam. And Michelle, do you want to just share with everybody some of the recent philanthropic efforts being held by Chobani?
Yeah, I think, some of you may have seen it already this past week, but, one thing that we believe in Chobani is purpose-driven leadership, right? Is one of the reasons why I love to work here. And, Hamdi, our founder, definitely believes that, we can and should do more. So, this past week, we learned of some outstanding school lunch balances that were going unpaid in the school district in Rhode Island. And, as a result of those unpaid balances, students were no longer receiving their school, hot school lunch. They were getting PB&Js instead. So, we worked back with the school district as well as a couple of others to help alleviate that debt and make certain that, kids are getting good, nutritious food through the end of the school year. But the reason I really wanted to share this is we talked earlier about partnerships, but I think partnership is just as important for brands as it is for retailers and technology and coming together. And that, when you can link yourself up with other brands who share, who are like-minded and share the same type of purpose that you do, you can really create a great, great story together and a great customer experience. If you can link that up with your retail partner, I think it's a win-win for everybody. The brands win, the retailers win, and in the end, you're helping improve humanity along the way. So, would encourage you all to find great like-minded brands and retailers to partner with.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Sam. And that will include today's presentation. Again, thanks so much to Michelle, Sam, and Nick for your time, as well as everybody who joined the call. Yeah, one popular question that has come in, yes, we will make sure to send the recording and presentation from today's webcast as a follow-up to everybody today. So please look out for that in the within the next couple days. So again, thank you, everybody. We hope everybody really took valuable insights away from this session. All of us would love to work with you, and we hope everybody enjoys the rest of your day, and thank you again.